We're moving on now to our final example. This example is based on Contoso University. So I'll start with the Razor pages, and you can see this is fairly straightforward, a student class with a first name, last name and enrollment date. But we've now got a bit more complexity here by having an ability to search the list, and also we've got paging here. That's pretty much what we've seen before. Okay, so we're going to start by creating our new project. Okay, so here we go, creating a new project. Done this before. It's an ASP.NET Core with Razor pages. I'm going to call it ASP_Razor-Contoso. We don't need the underbar there, do we? Here, ASP-Razor-Contoso. I think I've got a folder for that on drive D. So I'm going to have a solution separately, but that's not important. Make sure it's in version 5. Make sure you've got individual accounts configured for HTTPS, although I do wonder whether HTTPS is giving us problems. Let's see what happens if I don't configure it for HTTPS. Okay, I'll wait till the dependencies are sorted. Okay, you can see they are now. So I think we can run it now. I'll run it in Kestrel. Oh, I'm still being asked for a SSL certificate in spite of not wanting HTTPS. Yes, that's pretty much the same as before. It's still complaining about being not secure, although we don't seem to be using HTTPS. Anyway, it's running. The next thing in the tutorial is to modify the layout page, putting in a title for Contoso University and some menu items here, which we can just copy. So let's put the menu items in first. Copy those. The shared layout page. And we can put them in place of the home page and the privacy page, which we don't think we need. Okay, and then modify the title. So I'm going to call it Contoso. I'm going to put my name there, I think. Contoso Derek. That's one place. And then here's the other place. If you do something similar. Okay, moving on then. And finally the footer. I'd like you to modify the footer in the usual way, please. Make sure the module number is in there and your name is in there in particular. I'll leave you to do that. Okay, and there's one more occurrence. And then we've finished that. The tutorial has an index page, so which we can copy and use as our index page. So if I open the index page, I'm going to replace all that. Oh, got that twice. Okay, let's just run it to make sure that all those changes still work. Okay, so we've got a different menu about students, course, instructors and departments. And yes, it's not working perfectly for the mobile, but it'll do. We can now move on to the data model. And to start with, we're going to have three entities: the course, the enrollment and the student. And as we've already seen, courses enroll many students, a student can be enrolled on many courses. So it's a many-to-many. So the enrollment is the relational table relating course to student. So they're following, we've got a mixture. So we've got course ID, enrollment ID, and then for student they've just got ID. I would mark Microsoft down for that. So your choice is course ID, enrollment ID, and student ID, or or ID, ID, and ID. I don't like mixing them like that. Okay, so we're given the student here, which we can just copy. And in Visual Studio we can now create our usual models folder. So I'm right clicking, adding a new folder called models. Right clicking on models, adding a new class called student. And then pasting in the code. Oh yeah, right. So the using needs to, we don't want their namespace. So we take out their namespace. We do want the usings, but they need to be above the namespace. So they've got a system, they've got that, and those, I'm going to move those down to there. Right, although they're not being used at the moment. Don't think we need them. Okay, so let's just move this back a bit. Okay, so now we need to I think I'm going to go for student ID. I'm not really interested in a first and a middle name, so I'm just going to have a last name and a first name. I'm okay with an enrollment date. Obviously this doesn't compile because we haven't got an enrollment yet. But what I am going to do is, this is something you haven't seen before. This links a student to a collection of enrollments. So we can see all the students' enrollments in the student class. But I'm going to add one word. I don't know why Microsoft took it out, because it always used to be there. The word virtual. Can't remember now why we need that, but I'm sure we need it. So please put virtual in there. So I'll put a comment here as well. That this I collection of enrollment is a relationship between the student and enrollments, one to many. It's also referred to as a navigation property. We can use it to get to the students' enrollments. Okay, I'm going to do the same with the others. So I've moved down to the enrollment and I'm copying that code. So right click on models, add a new class. Let me just check the spelling of enrollment. You can have enrollment with a single L or a double L. What has Microsoft gone for? A double L. Right. I'm going to take out the using. Put it up there. take out their namespace. And leave the rest. So what we've got is an enumeration for grades, which I'm happy with. I'm glad to see Microsoft likes enumerations. I would have actually, I'd prefer it to be called grades. I'm going to change that to grades. That is a single grade, but it's a single grade, it's an instance of grades. Am I changing anything else? Got an enrollment ID, which I'm happy with, course ID, and a student ID. There's another annotation I haven't seen before. We can have a null. We can have no grade as a grade that hasn't been assigned yet. What they've done here, look, is put a question mark there, which means the grade is nullable. I'd rather use the word nullable. That I think is more readable. Quite often you'll miss a question mark, so you can use nullable instead. So that's a nullable grade. Okay, now can't find course yet, but that's alright, but just remember to make these virtual. So I want a virtual course and a virtual student. So again, these are the navigation properties. So all the enrollment is it links a student to a course. And we have a grade for the student on the course, which is fine. We can get to the course, we can get to the student. So that still won't build yet. So we need the last class, which we're going to find down here, which is the course. Copy that, final model, add a class called course. Okay, move the usings. Yes, got two of those. That's why it's objecting, but these can go perhaps. Okay, I'll take the namespace out again. Move the class in a bit. It's a shift tab key. Oh yes, I've forgotten about this. They're actually suggesting here that we don't have an automatic generation of the ID. Normally the ID will just be an integer. It'll just be a number, 1, 2, 3, 4. But in this case I think they wanted to use a course ID themselves without being automatically generated. I'm sure that's going to cause problems. A virtual collection of enrollments. Okay, otherwise we've got a course ID, the title of the course, and credits. Oh, let's make a slight change, shall we? Let's have a course code. Nothing to stop you adding more attributes. Although the alternative was to use the course code as the primary key. That's what we could have done. But I don't want to make too many changes. That should compile now if we build it. Okay, we've got our data model with a many-to-many relationship between course and student. That's a good point to pause. We're now ready to scaffold the student pages. But I'm not going to do that straight away. What I'm going to do is just move down here and remind you of the database connection string, which is sitting in the app settings.json file. Don't think they're going to change it. We don't have to write it because I asked you to use the individual account, so it should already be there. So let's just check app settings.json. There's the MS SQL database. It's going to be called ASP, so I think we can abbreviate this, so we'll call it ASP-Razor-Contoso, and then I'm just going to reduce that number. Just have a 21 there. I've just changed the name of the database in the connection string. The next thing is that I'm going to alter the database context class, which again, because we added the individual accounts, there should already be a database context class there. So that we can, I just copy some of this, I don't want it all. What they've got here is a way of ensuring that you get a singular name for the database table, course, enrollment, student, and I actually don't want that at all. I want the opposite. I want to have plural names. I'm going to copy that. Open the data folder, application DB context, and paste that in down here. And yes, we can't find the classes because we need to use the models folder. There we go. So we've now got names for the database tables which have got an S on the end: students, enrollments, and courses. That should build. I always like to check it. Okay. They've changed the name of the database context to school context, which we didn't need to do. I think we should be able to scaffold now. The scaffold in Razor, you have to put the folder there, so the first thing is to put a student's folder. Let's try that. So in Pages, I'm going to add a folder called Students. You don't need to add that folder in MVC, but for some reason you do in Razor. Okay, and then we right-click on the Students folder and add a new scaffolding item. new scaffolded item. And what we want is Razor pages with the entity framework using CRUD. The model class we're going to choose is students, and the data context class is application database context. We're going to add. Okay, so if we look in the students folder now, we should see create, delete, details, edit, and index. You can see here that they're checking that when you add the database context, it's called school context. And there's the name there. But if you look in our startup.cs, you'll see that we've already got an application DB context, and the connection string is called default connection. We don't need to change that. Okay, this next bit I've never done before, but it seems to be adding some lines of code that'll help us if the migrations go wrong, if there's an exception. So I'm going to copy that line of code in the configure services. Let's add that. Okay, we've added add database developer page exception filter. Oh, it's already there, look. Didn't need to do that. I don't know, Microsoft, you can't keep up to date yourself. That's already there. And I think these are there as well. The exception page and the migration endpoint. Yes, they're the same, look. So forget that. Okay. Now, I haven't run it yet, because last time we had to enter the data manually. And what we're going to do now is update the program.cs to create the database if it doesn't exist. Again, let's just check whether this. So we'll look in the main program. Is there a create database if it doesn't exist call? So we're going to the program.cs now. No, it's not there, is it? Okay. So I'm going to copy what's in the main program. The main method. So instead of that one line of code, we've got 3 lines of code. Okay, it hasn't found the right library for this. So it looks like it needs that using, dependency injection using, which isn't there, is it? So let's put that in. Still not happy with create DB if not exists. Ah, I know, sorry. That's because we haven't got the whole method. Look, there's a whole method here. Create DB if doesn't exist. That needs copying. That's why it's not building. It used to be easier than this. Okay, it's now happy with create DB if it doesn't exist. Except that they've got a school context and we've got an application DB context, which it should find if we use the data folder. Yep, there we go. Okay, don't know why that line of code is commented out. So essentially we're ensuring the database is created here, if it doesn't already exist. So it's there to create a database if it doesn't exist, which does mean you can delete the entire database when it's up and running and it'll create it again. Obviously if you delete the database, data is lost. So when you want to preserve the data in the database, then you must use migrations. So I think this is a different way of doing it. Because they want later to delete the database and then move to migrations. So we are ready to run the app. Select the students link and then be able to create a new database. But this time we are going to move on. We are going to seed the database, as you can see, with the database initializer, which I'd like you to change so that it is more relevant to our university rather than their university. And we'll have to change first mid-name because I changed that. But there's an example of how we can seed the database with a database initializer. I'm going to copy that. And in the data folder, oh, we've already got migrations, look. In the data folder we're going to add a new class. They've called it DB Initializer with a Z. I'm going to change that to UK English and use an S. DB Initializer with an S. So let's right click, add a new class, and call it DB Initializer. dbinitializer.cs, and in there I'm going to paste all that code. Oh goodness, hold on, I don't want to copy the whole thing. I just want what's inside the class. I'm going to just copy just what's inside the initializer class, which should go down to there, I think. Let's copy that and paste it in here. Okay, this again, school context becomes application DB context. Found that, hasn't found student. Let's use the models folder. Okay, it's now found student. We have got a problem with here. Got us now happy with the names. But I'd like you to change these names, please, for your marks in your logbook. So make these names you know. Don't mind about the enrollment dates, and you can leave those. And these are courses. Again, I'd rather you, could you change these please to these titles are courses that exist in BNU, rather than these subject areas which look more like A-levels than university BSc courses. And then we've got this slight change here. I changed it to grades, didn't I? Not grade. Okay, and now it should compile. Okay, so I'm going to build that. Okay, so that's built. Right, go back to the, how is it linked in? That's the next question. So the code checks if there are any students in the data. If there are no students, it adds test data. Okay, so I think we have to add these two lines. Okay, in the program.cs. Yeah, so and obviously we don't have a Z there, we have an S. Oh, we've got a Z there. I didn't change that, did I? Don't know why they've commented that out, because we've got that line now. Okay, so we've got context. Oh, got a bit of duplication here. Right, try again. Right, that should match now. We're now going to ensure the database is created and initialize it. And the initialize checks if there are any students. If there are students already in the database, it does nothing. If there aren't students in the database, it's going to add all these student names. And the courses and the enrollments. Now you see what happened to the, you notice here with the course has its own code, whereas the enrollment doesn't have an ID. So that's the enrollment IDs are generated automatically, whereas the course IDs are these particular numbers. And the student IDs are generated automatically. So it's only the course IDs which are particular numbers. And here in the foreign key they've been linked. Okay, I'm going to build it. I think it's alright. And I think we're ready to run. Okay, I'm going to run the app and select the students link. Okay, let's go for it. So I'm going to go to students. Oh, goodness, it works. We have our list of students.